Hello and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the To-Do List. I'm your host, Eric Fisher, and this is the show where I talk to the people behind the productivity. This week I'm excited to share with you a conversation I had with my friend, Dave Delaney. Dave did something unusual recently, which was taking time off from social media for 2 months. So Dave and I talked through the process of what led him to that decision, what that looked like, lessons he learned from it, and then even some of the things that he and I talked about in terms of Dave and I usually see each other at least once or twice a year when I'm down visiting in Nashville. That's not possible this year. How do we become non-lazy friends and networkers when it comes to professional and personal lives, using technology, but not using technology constantly like it feels like we're doing right now? As we say in this conversation, that Zoom burnout is a real thing. So hopefully you will get something incredibly helpful and useful, and if nothing else, get you thinking about this realm of activity for you, not just in terms of how it affects your focus, how it affects your mood, what it does to your priorities, but overall using technology to live a life better and not just be used by the technology habitually. And just hear that other people are thinking about things in this way when you hear me talking in this conversation with Dave Delaney. So this week, it is my privilege to welcome back to the show once again. It is my friend, Dave Delaney. Dave, welcome back.
Thank you, Eric. It's great to be back.
So we had a call, let's see, it's been like 5 months. We did a call because it was, that season of everything hit in 2020. The thing that will not be named. No, it's fine. I for a long time, to be honest, for a long time, I was just like, I'm not going to talk about this. I don't care. Like, I've got back episodes. I've got, new stuff, whatever. But like, you and I are both in that online realm and in that space. And, we did that call. And then a while later, you basically took 2 months off the internet.
Yes.
Like you unplugged, and I've not seen anybody that I know personally go that long. And so one part of me was just like clapping, slow clap, like, good job, Dave. Good job. And two was really envious. Like, man, I wish that I could do that. And I have done that in the past. I have done like a whole 3 weeks to a month, somewhere in there is the most I've ever done at one time. But it's been a long time since I've done that. And a lot of people out there, they hear all of this. I'm going to quit the internet for a month, or I'm going to detox, or, maybe people do it for Lent. Some people do this. I've seen them do it.
Yeah.
But point being, they're like, how is that even possible in this modern society, especially when we're kind of locked down? And that's one of the main communication tools we have. I just want to know, like, without going into too many negative specifics per se, the word politics I'll insert here.
Yeah.
I mean, we can both kind of attest to the space has become somewhat toxic depending upon who you're following. But even if you're following all the right people, stuff still slips through. I mean, where was your mindset at, and what kind of drove you to taking like 2 months off the internet?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, it wasn't off the internet. It was off social media. So
yes, I should be clear.
Yeah. And some people were, I wrote a blog post about taking a break because there was a little confusion and I was like, oh crap, like I work for myself. So, if clients or prospects think that like I'm not working for 2 months, that's different. I wasn't taking a vacation, specifically. But for me, so a couple things happened. One, this, I don't have to explain to you how crappy this year has been for me, because it's been pretty crappy for most people in a lot of ways. And of course, there's good things as well. But the quick version of this is my kid's school was destroyed in the tornadoes in March here in Nashville, and some, neighborhoods near us. And it was pretty astounding, just pretty amazing, like what had happened. And so fast forward 3 months to May 3rd, March 3rd, tornado, May 3rd, straight line winds. And during the straight line wind storms that came through Nashville, that's when Mother Nature, maybe she missed our house the first time. She got us the second time. And we lost, 7 trees, had holes in our roof, 10 holes in our roof. And long story short, we were displaced for 3 months. We had to stay at a 2-bedroom condo for 3 months. That's 4 people and a dog, small dog, but anyway. And so during that time, I was like, I felt a lot of stress if you've ever been through something like that, or any of your listeners have been through something like this, dealing with insurance, those nice people you pay hundreds of dollars a month to, should be pretty easy. And apparently it's not. And it literally became like another job for me to be constantly dealing with insurance and contractors and all this stuff. So a great amount of stress there. And then combined with the pandemic and all the other things that were going on, I just decided I felt that I was getting more negativity than positivity out of my use of social networks. And that, with all due respect and love for all the people that I do correspond with or have corresponded with over the years, I just felt like I'd never actually taken a break, like never disconnected from Twitter and Facebook and so on for long. As you know, I ran social media for a technology consumer electronics company and I was the face and the social media person for that company. So for Griffin Technology for like 4.5 years, and with Emma, an email marketing company before that for a couple of years. And so I was the face and I was the guy tweeting. I was the guy. So during that period, absolutely, there was no way I could take a break. And so fast forward to now or this summer, and I just felt like it's time to take a break and see what happens.
Yeah, I think that you felt very much like what I had felt in a previous position that I held up until about this time last year. It's been almost a year now since I have not been in the forefront of a social media manager type position, or that my position requires me to constantly be monitoring, looking, responding, posting, etc. And the thing is that there are people who still do that, even though it is not their job. They're so used to scrolling. I mean, that, I can't say that I know what the breakdown is in terms of people listening right now in on this. I know a number of people will say, oh yeah, social media, part of my job in some form or fashion. So many of us have made social media part of our routine anyway. Mm-hmm. And especially this year. And I think then the thing is that everybody from that point forward, even the people that were posting really positive things I would see it and be like, oh, that's so awesome. Like, I feel like I'm almost on the verge of tears right now because that's just a great heartwarming story, the kind of stuff you want to see on social. And then pivot, and it's almost bipolar or the exact opposite negative reaction than when you see somebody just stating their opinion or someone states a positive opinion or an opinion you agree with, but then you see the comments devolve into just nonsense. And it's just like, I can't take this anymore. So
yeah. And then and in the background of that, you've got, algorithms configured to get you to click and to get you enraged in what you're seeing, because that gets more eyeballs and more action. That's exactly it. And I started realizing too, I realized a while back, but it's easy to just pontificate, from your desk on Facebook or from your phone on the toilet or wherever. But the truth is that, if you want some sort of change, some sort of action, something, if you want to see some good in the world, it's going to take actually doing something about it, whatever that cause may be. So, and that was part of it too. I was just feeling like, I've had conversations with people before, and they're like, well, where's your stance on politics or religion or whatever? And I've replied usually, you can look at my feeds and figure out where I am on things, but it's not that I have any shame or anything like that. But at the same time, I figured, buy me a beer and we can talk all you want about that stuff. Mm-hmm. That's a little trickier now because I haven't been drinking for like 3.5 months, but we can buy Bobby a non-alcoholic beer or a coffee. Coffee's good. And we can sit down and actually talk through, these things. And I feel that those conversations go a lot further. I just had an hour Zoom call with one of my best friends, like childhood friends, who's definitely more I'm certainly more liberal and he's more conservative. And so we were kind of going back and forth, but he's very much sort of from the same background and things. And we both found that we were not arguing at all about anything. And in fact, nobody is fully left or fully right or fully whatever. There's always some sort of, medium in the middle. And we ended up like just agreeing with most of the stuff we were talking about. So, but it was a healthy conversation. And afterwards, it felt good to like, and also just to talk to somebody with a different point of view about different things. And we need more discourse that way, and the social networks aren't really helping facilitate that.
They're not. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. There is definitely good that comes from social media when done right. And I think you almost need a driver's license for social media. You have to provide, you have to go through these tests and prove that this in order to do it. Not as a marketer, but exactly. Just to do that, to have that dialogue that means something. And it's just, again, you're up against algorithms and UI and design that's, basically set up to be addictive, unfortunately, and disconnecting in a weird way. It's ultra connecting in a very low meaning way. There's probably a better way to say that. In fact, I'm sure there is, but that in other words, Dave, I would potentially, I know if you were a stranger to me, if there's the different levels. One is I see you post something and I comment and I'm disconnected because, like, to me, you're less of a person because you're just a thing to comment to. Whereas right now we've got our video on while we record this, and that's a level higher. Well, I would say there's probably a middle ground there where there's private messaging, not just public messaging, but then we've got video on and I can see your face and we can kind of interact that way. But then you and I know each other in person. And if we were in person, like face to face, even more so. So it's carrying all of that over. In other words, social networking cannot carry the full extent of a relationship in and of itself. And yet we're wanting it to play relationship crutch and and societal crutch and fundraising and all these other, all these potential good things. It's good for low meaning, low frequency, it's good for noise when it comes to that stuff and gaining some initial ground there. But really the benefit, and again, I've always known as the networking guy, the real networking isn't taking place on the social networks. It can maybe start and or catalyze from off of something you saw on a social network with somebody. Like I can see that I saw Dave. I don't know what you posted recently. I think you posted a picture of like DJ stuff. You were young and so on. And you and I can have a conversation about that. But again, it's good for snapshots, in other words, but that's not a conversation.
Right. No, exactly. And I think, I wrote about this in my book in New Business Networking. Like I've got chapters on networking effectively and nicely. I run networking for nicepeople.com. You can drop by, my shameless plug. But I have these points in the book and using these social networks to build relationships and things. Now, you're an early adopter. I'm an early adopter in a lot of these mediums. And so with like something like Twitter, for example, like I started in February 2007, there wasn't an algorithm. In order to find new people, we had a shared Google sheet, or maybe it was, I guess it was a Google sheet that we would add ourselves to, and you could go back to and check that sheet to see by category what you like to tweet about or what your business is or where you're based. And we would use that as a reference point to find other people on Twitter to connect with, or just through like Follow Friday.
I was waiting to say it. I was like, I remember Follow Friday. It was so cool. Hey, everybody, you should follow Dave Delaney on Twitter because he tweets about this, and he's an awesome guy and it was so cool. And I missed that.
Yeah, it wasn't an algorithm telling you to follow this person. It was, a friend of a friend, or, recommending that you connect, and you're far more likely to act on that. Now, there's certainly, I don't mean to like poo-poo social media because I do enjoy still using it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think part of the challenge too is that you don't necessarily know who you're conversing with sometimes, in the sense that it's hard to build a relationship with a troll or with a bot. And there seems to be a lot of that going on, especially on Twitter these days. As far as Facebook goes, like I still find value in Facebook when I ask for recipe suggestions. I've got a great thread for butter chicken recipes, by the way.
Nice.
And I've already cooked 2 of them, so I'm working through the list. Or like recommendations when you travel. Like, I posting on Facebook that, hey, my wife and our kids, the 4 of us are going to New York City. What are your favorite things to do or favorite restaurants? And then suddenly, and Facebook does a good job of like automatically adding it to a map, which makes it great. So stuff like that is awesome. But, as you said, I do think there needs to be not just a EULA or something, but rather like an actual test before you start using these platforms, especially these days, to understand, because people don't understand. They don't even realize this is going on. And I think when you work in technology and in communications and in marketing and all the worlds that we live in, you tend to forget that like most of the world, or a large part of the world, they don't work in that space, and they don't realize that, these things are taking place and these design features are done for a reason. So,
yeah, I know there's that Netflix doc that I considered watching, but I've read kind of reviews about it, and it basically, I already know everything they're going to say in there. And, it comes to the end, and it's, I forget what it's called, but it's,
is it the great hack, or is it
might be, no, it's not that one. It's
Tristan Harris's,
it's
most recent,
fairly recent. Yeah. A lot of people have been kind of raving about it. And yet, I've been talking with people like Cal Newport and others for years now about this kind of, technological, I don't know, just the immersion. Like you were saying, like if we're always using it, whether it's for work or for just habitual use, or both, like we've been in, if you're immersed in it all the time, you kind of forget what not being immersed in it is like. And that's what you just experienced, at least to a degree. What did you find? What did you find when you basically took that 2 months? Explain to me what the rules of the 2 months were. And then what you found out about yourself and life outside of the social networks.
So some of the rules were, so I did check each social network maybe once a day or once every couple of days, literally going on to check for private messages and then leaving. Again, my work, I work with a lot of large companies. I'm a speaker. And so I can't just miss opportunities for work. So I didn't, and personal messages as well. Not everybody, I tried my best to communicate that I was taking the time off. But that got missed by some folks. So what I found, you pause, so I've been practicing mindfulness and meditating for the last, I don't know, not quite a year. I've dabbled with this over the years, but I really like Sam Harris and his work, and his Waking Up app is amazing. And so that's the app I've been using. And I've been meditating like 10 minutes a day, going through his daily, thing. And there's a free link. You can get like a free sample of it or whatever. But I do encourage people to do this. And I'm not some wishy-washy spiritual person per se, but it has really helped me kind of slow down and calm myself and be more mindful. So to that point, every time, like, especially with Instagram, I would take a photo with my phone to capture something. And then I'd go to post it on social, on, Instagram and Facebook and so forth. And it got me thinking like, no, I can't. First of all, I can't do that. I can take the photo, which is fine, but I can't post it. And then it made me start to think like, well, why do I have to share this moment? Like, what's the point? What's the point of me sharing this? What is so important that I have to share this with everybody who follows me, when maybe it's just a private moment with my son or my daughter or whatever, the dog, although she has her own Instagram. She is highly addicted, by the way. She just will not stop. Total attitude. But it's amazing. So it really made me just pause or to tweet something. When I'm about to tweet it, I instead I would think, okay, why am I tweeting this? Like, what's my point? Why do I need to share this? So that was a big lesson. I also found that we were in a condo building on like the 10th floor or something. and we have a dog. So I had to constantly, several times per day or in the evening or whatever, had to take the dog out. And it was kind of a long haul to get down to the little park area. And each time I did, I would grab my phone while she's doing her business to look on Facebook or to look on Twitter. But I deleted those apps off my phone and blocked them also using, I was using the Freedom app to block access to social networks. Also access to news, to Google News and to all news. I was also blocking that too, because that's a big part of what was, grinding my gears. So instead, what I found was great is I started reading more books. Remember books?
Yeah.
I started reading a lot more. And when I was reading on the Kindle, I forgot just how seamless and great it is to go from iPad to phone, and Kindle remembers where you are in the book and fast forwards to that part. So instead, when I'm waiting for Peggy to do her thing, I'm looking at my phone and I'm like, oh, well, let me do the Kindle thing. And so now I'm standing there reading a book while and I'm like, this is so much better for me.
That's awesome.
So that was another realization too. But yeah, it was just like a really refreshing break. I found, by the way, I averaged this out. I actually looked at Instagram out of curiosity. Now I've been using Instagram since 2010, I think. And I actually wrote like a love letter to Instagram in the early days because I just love it. So I wrote this out because I was thinking about how much, because it takes me about 15 minutes to post a photo to Instagram. Like take the photo, edit it in Snapseed or some other editor, then think about the caption I want to include, and then think like, which hashtag should I use so that people might find this? So it takes me about 15 minutes per photo. So I looked at this, and so this is data that's a little off now because I've posted since then. But at the time, I had 3,642 images on Instagram since I created my account in 2010. That worked out to, and so at 15 minutes per image, that worked out to 37 days, 22 hours, and 30 minutes. Thank you, Wolfram Alpha.
Wow.
So 37 days of my life, almost 38 days of my life have been spent posting to Instagram.
Wow, man. I don't know what to say to that. But that's just Instagram. Man, can you imagine
just Instagram
tweets and Facebook posts and all of that? Because I'm sure in the past, you would take the photo, do all of what you just did for Instagram, and then were you sending it right over to Facebook, or were you then hopping over to Facebook, copying and pasting instead, and maybe tweeting it also? Some automation, maybe. I would post it directly, or through Instagram. I post it to Facebook and Twitter too. But of course, then I've got to go over to Facebook to check to see, did I get any likes, any comments? Yeah, so that 15 minutes does not count. Also posting it elsewhere, but that's minimal. But then also checking over and over to see who's commented, liked, etc. on all those places.
Exactly.
Oh gosh. So it's probably double or triple at minimum, really.
Yeah.
When you think about it, just based off activity from Instagram as the source to start with. Then you go over to, well, what if I'm doing stuff? What if I just go to Facebook and just post something there and just then spin it up, and Twitter and vice versa, and all of the above. Thing. Jeez. Oh yeah, man. And there you go. So then reading more.
Yeah. Like reading. So reading more, writing more. I started journaling again. I used to journal a lot, like especially in my days when I was backpacking Europe and just kind of living abroad, and maybe even certainly in my 20s, 30s. I used to early 30s. I used to journal a lot, and I just found all those old journals recently, and so I've started going through those again, which has been a fun thing to do, and definitely so rewarding to do that, by the way, to go through the old journals and realize like, oh, life doesn't suck. And it actually turned out to be okay. I recently went through this exercise in my current new journal. I've been reading through my old journal entries because I've gone through like some dark periods of nothing terrible, but I mean, I've just been like, stressed. And, I think we all are going through something like that these days. And realizing that, no, like the there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And like, I'm living better, so much better now than I was back then. Even though in my memory, I fooled myself into thinking like, oh, living in Ireland was great always. And it wasn't great always. I was broke and, and it rained a lot, and things like that. So going back through the journals, my old journals and looking at how things have shaped up, you start to realize like things are pretty good.
I've got to imagine that you were jumping on social to check, for messages basically related to potential business opportunities, but then jumping back off again, and they weren't on your phone. So you were having to sit down. You have to take the time to go purposefully sit down in front of a computer and do that. But you're also taking this 2 months during a period of time where things are in semi-lockdown, interaction in terms of human connection, positive human connection. Obviously, avoiding negative human connection was a lot of what you did this for. But I mean, obviously, you've got you have your wife and you have your son and your daughter, and you probably spent more time with them, which was more meaningful. But also other people in terms of maybe just using a phone for what it's there for, a phone.
Yeah. Well, yeah, reaching out and touching somebody like the old Bell ads. That's not creepy, by the way, for you kids.
Yeah, it was the ad.
Touching somebody. It was
reach out and touch someone. Yes.
Well, you might have to include a link to that.
I will find that and include that. I'm making a note right now.
Yes. They're classic 80s ads. Yeah, so you're right. And what I started doing was I started thinking about like the people who I've had like really great experiences with, many of which are friends who I very seldom see, who are people like you who I've met at conferences over the years. And so, I started reaching out and saying, like emailing people that I haven't talked to in years and saying, hey, you want to like do a Zoom and catch up? And it really like paid off. Like it was just, and not paid off like in any sort of business way, but just, it was just so good to like catch up. It was like South by Southwest used to be like summer camp. You'd go back and you'd, hugs, high fives all around with all these people that you get to see once a year. And you spend a short amount of time together having a blast. And then it's back to your jobs, back to your families, back to normal. And so I started thinking about all these like awesome people that I've met over the years and started just reaching out and saying, great. And like my friend Marcus Whitney, his book just came out, or, back, this summer, just came out. And rather than, I couldn't post about it on social. I told him I would when I started doing my email newsletter again, which I started. I also took that off for the summer as well, the Nice Maker. So I picked up the phone and I called him. And instead of writing an Amazon review, although I did that after, but I did call him and said, hey, man, it's me. We hadn't talked in a while. And I'm like, man, your book is awesome. I'm so proud of you. Like, it's really, really great. And we had a great catch up, great conversation. I'm sure like I probably made his day and I made my day too, just like catching up with a friend. And so I think we've sort of fooled ourselves into thinking that we can foster relationships using social in its current form. I think, you can build relationships. Absolutely. For sure. But, there is something to Dunbar's number, right? With like 150, you can only really balance 150 true relationships. And even that's a bit of a stretch, like 120 tops. And so to balance these relationships, like I think everybody needs to take a step back and think like quality over quantity, right? Like I'd much prefer to have quality relationships with a few people than, hundreds or thousands of mediocre at best relationships with people, and I think Facebook has done a good quote, air quotes there, job on redefining what friends even means, because really friends on Facebook are acquaintances. So it should be called Acquaintance Book, really. You know what I mean? Like, and you start to realize that. And one way that I realized this, by the way, as part of my little experiment was to see actually how many people reached out to me while I was offline. How many of my quote unquote friends would email me or call me and go, Dave, I saw you're off social. What's going on? Or where are you? Oh, man, I missed that Dave Delaney's tweets. Like very few. Yeah,
out of sight, out of mind. in a lot of ways
Right.
when it comes to this.
Right.
And that's, I've been thinking about this too. Cause I mean, I've had friends from like high school and college who then you connect with back when Facebook started to be a thing and social networks were starting to show up.
Yeah.
And then because you saw somebody with any amount of frequency in low, I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to name it, but basically that when I would see a piece of information of them come through my feed, I would feel like I'd had a touch point with them. When in fact it wasn't really true. I just kind of knew of it. I had a conversation. Do you know John Meese? He's down in your area. He works at Hyatt. He's the head of Platform University for Michael Hyatt. And he was on the show. I think it was this year still, or very late last year. Either way, like he tells this story, and I'm going to say it in like 30 seconds. Basically, he stopped using Facebook because his dad found out that he and his wife were going to no. What it was it's not that his dad found out, is that all his dad's friends found out before his dad was able to tell them he was going to be a grandfather. It stole the thunder because of this communal, very low, just spreading of information. Like somebody saw it, somebody else saw it, and so on and so on. And it spreads virally in that local, community there in south of Nashville somewhere. And, and that basically his father was like, I kind of feel like I didn't get to tell my friends the good news they already knew. And it was like, oh, instead of, hey guys, guess what? It was like, and so that kind of relationship crutch has like taken over so much, I think. And again, this is not to say social media can't be hugely powerful and hugely beneficial when it comes to the forming, like you and I wouldn't know each other, I don't think, if it weren't for social media. I think that's how we met, but that's not how we maintained or deepened the relationship. It was all this other stuff too. It was meeting in person. I don't know how many times now with my many visits to one of my favorite places. Nashville. So
no, you're right about that. I mean, I on the like early days of podcasting, like when I started podcasting in 2005, there was a podcast conference in Kingston, Ontario called Podcasters Across Borders, which, mainly Canadian podcasters, but we all went. And that was the first time like meeting people in person. And then like, tech conferences started popping up. Other tech conferences started popping up on my radar, like Podcast New Media Expo in Ontario, California, and Blog World and South by and Gnomedex in Seattle. And these conferences that, now the people that you're tweeting with, you're actually meeting up in person. And that's part of why I started doing like the bar camp and pod camp in Nashville and Geek Breakfast and Nash Cocktail. And, every time I traveled, I would organize a tweet up in whatever city I was going to, just to get together with people that are friends on Twitter to actually be like real friends, like actually meet in person. And so there is something to be said there. And I feel like I've been thinking more about this with like I had a girlfriend a million years ago. It did not work out, and I won't bore you with that story, but man, it's a terrible story. It's really bad. But it actually ended up making me go to Ireland, which is where I met my wife. So go figure.
There you go.
Yeah. Light at the end of the tunnel. That might be a theme here. But the story, or what was my point to this? Long distance relationship. She had moved away, and it didn't work out because of the distance. And so there is something to be said about like how long distance relationships, like romantic relationships, long distance relationships don't typically work out. It takes you to be in person, like human to human, to actually make, I don't know what magical mojo is involved in that, but relationships really do solidify when you meet in person. What I wrote about in my book about literally about handshakes, high fives, hugs, which of course are all frowned upon these days, but at least like happy masked nods or something. But my point to that is, meeting in person is still very important. And social can be a great way to keep relationships alive between those meetings. But if those meetings never occur, or they occur once and then they don't again, then I can't imagine those relationships to stay that strong. And I think on Facebook, while you get that occasional like from that old friend or love or like or retweet or whatever on Twitter, like you mentioned, those are only like reminders like, oh, Eric's still alive.
Yes.
Great. And then on to like some cat video or something. So that's part of the reason why I really do believe in commenting or replying. Like it's, even if you just want to share some love, like if you hear this episode, for example, and you because of a link on Twitter, for example, like retweet it, but like add a comment to it as opposed to just liking something. Because if you just hit the little thumb button and that's all you're doing on Facebook, that's such a waste of time. That's telling all these people, all these acquaintances that you're still alive. And you know what? There's probably an app for that now anyway. Like there's probably something that could like some Chrome extension that could probably randomly like your friends' things.
It's like walking by and just nodding,
right, exactly.
In a hallway versus, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. I loved this thing. I saw that you such and such, how'd that go? And I think the thing for us this year is, well, first, let me preface this. Let me give a context. So I was lucky. Last week of February, first week of March of 2020. Mm-hmm. So everybody can kind of think of where that is in the timeline here. I was lucky enough to go to a conference that my old work, Social Media Examiner, used to puts on called Social Media Marketing World. I was going as part of the Agora Pulse team, my new position. Right. And I was going to get to see all of them in person, which was awesome. And I loved being able to do that. Then I got to hang out with friends like Jeff C., who and a bunch of other people like Lou Mangello, who is awesome. And
Lou's great.
Lots of people got to be in San Diego, got to travel, which again got cut short soon after. So San Diego, meeting up with all those people from my team as well as my friends, seeing them, hanging out with them. Then Jeff and I hop on a plane and travel to Florida, where we're going to a podcast conference that we were going to speak at, but we were there a day early and we went to Disney. So we crammed all this in one week.
Where's Lou when you need him?
Right. Well, he was, unfortunately he was unable to make it, but he gave us tips and things like that. So that was awesome. But anyway, great time. Then that all kind of broke down in terms of, we don't know when the next time is that we're going to be able to do, like, I don't know when the next time is I can really truly do a conference at all, let alone visit, again, one of the places that I love to visit, which is Nashville, where I often see you at least once or twice a year in person. So that kind of gets to what we're talking about there. But I think the thing is that in my head, it's like, oh, you know what? Then if that's not going to happen for a while, how do I flip this paradigm of being a lazy, not just networker, but friend, and truly start to connect through technology without being used by technology?
Right.
That's where my headspace is these days.
No, and it's a good question. And I think, it's part of the reason. So obviously all of my speaking engagements have they're now all virtual, of course.
Right.
I'm a trainer for Google. So I do a lot of training for folks on small business owners and things on how to use Google and digital marketing for their businesses. I also have I do LinkedIn training and how best to use LinkedIn, but I do this all virtually now. I've even come up with this thing called the NICE method, because I'm all about being nice and spreading some sunshine in the world. And I did these in-person workshops called Communication Mastery, and I've actually put together this NICE team growth workshop where I'm actually virtually working with teams and bringing them together in new and refreshing ways. And you can drop by davedelaney.me if you'd like to learn more about that, friendly listeners. Doing something like this helps. We have video on right now, which really does help, I think. And while Zoom burnout is a real thing, of course, but I'm not saying everybody has to be on back-to-back Zoom calls all day, but I do think that scheduling some social time virtually for the time being, and also, by the way, understanding that the pandemic is not here forever. Yes, COVID is, but so are other problems like, flu and things like that. I'm not comparing the flu to COVID, for the record, not comparing the two. The flu has a vaccination. I just got shot in my arm yesterday, actually. So I'm getting that early this year. My point to that is that we will be meeting in person again. Mm-hmm. Not just us, but everyone listening. You will be meeting people in person again. We are going to get through this. It's going to take a while, but we are going to be meeting up in person again. Maybe it'll be 6 feet away. I've already had, some coffee meetings like that where we weren't quite close and we weren't high-fiving, but at least we could do that. And so, this stuff is coming. And it's going to get better. So I think that's really important for everyone listening to remember that as crappy as it may be right now, what's coming is going to be better, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, and that even in the meantime, now more than ever, which I hate that phrase, but it's true. I will say it only because it's true. Human connection is necessary, and it can be healing, and it can be helpful, and it can be uplifting, and it can be stabilizing. And realizing that is what kind of made me, you know what? I can't just jump ship from social media altogether, but at the same time, I can't rely on it to give me all those things to the full extent that I, as a human, need those things. I need to be giving of those things to those immediately with me, if that's the case. Like I have, my son, my daughter, my wife, much like you do. And then there's that sphere of right beyond that here, local friends, where I can do some of that social distance coffee stuff, which has been incredibly helpful to be able to do that. And then it's that next level, though, where connection necessitates having technology involved, whether it's just a phone call, like you said, or doing Zoom calls like we're doing right now. And again, like you said, Zoom burnout, very real thing. Like being on video calls constantly can wear you out. And so for me, I'm coming to the place where, again, even though I have really pulled back my social media use to where, it's not on my phone at all. I'm not doing it there. In fact, I wiped when iOS 14, I'm on my iPhone. So when iOS 14 came out the other week, I wiped my phone. And then I reinstalled it. I installed iOS 14 and then pulled in some backup information only. And then I didn't install any apps other than like, okay, I need that weather one and I need that like whatever. And so slowly I've just added a few apps here and there, but I went like cold turkey just to kind of undo the like, like psychologically, I needed to do that to start over, kind of like your Twitter thing where you unfollowed everybody. Yeah. And
you mentioned Tristan Harris, his documentary on Netflix. And I love the work that they're doing at the Center for Humane Tech. I'm not involved with it. I would love to get involved, actually. I really like what they're doing. But one of their tips is really simple, but it's to set up your phone in grayscale. Yes. Like in black and white. And so I hit the side button on my iPhone 3 times and it goes black and white. And I keep it that way most of the time just to kind of alleviate the notification colors and try to do that. One way you can use social media right now, social networks right now, to do what we're talking about is go to Twitter, look at your direct messages. Go to Facebook, look at your private messages. Go to LinkedIn, look at your InMail and your private messages. Go to your phone and look at your voice messages or your text messages. Do this, like set yourself a goal each day of doing this and looking through these direct messages and find one person that you've communicated with. I say this way because chances are you probably have a little tighter relationship if you've private messaged each other. Choose one person, email them and set up a Zoom meeting and say, this is informal, no agenda, just catching up. We haven't seen each other in forever, wanted to catch up and see how you're doing. Let's do Zoom next Monday. Are you around? And start doing that. Like try to schedule something every day for the next week, but just go through and find these private messages that you've had and find these folks and then rekindle those relationships by doing that.
Yeah. And that's even something I've been considering now is like, hey, what's that list of people, which you're definitely on, where I want to make sure that I've got like at bare minimum once a quarter, once every 12 weeks, we do this. Yeah. We do a video call, and then it's something to look forward to. And I can say, oh man, yeah, I did that. And now I'm going to go talk to so-and-so. And now obviously there are people that are more frequently contacted, et cetera, because they're either, again, living in my house with me or living in my same neighborhood. But even that sometimes can be a struggle to like make sure like I have frequent contact and, you know, consistent contact with the people that are my friends here locally. Although that we've all kind of upped our game there, and I'm proud of us. But, you know, even long distance family for that matter. I talked to my mom like a week ago, and I was like, dang it, it's been like a month since I talked to my mom. What the heck? Yeah. I feel so guilty. So I don't know. It can be hard to break this habit or the habits and life that we've fallen into in terms of technology and relationships and human connection. And, you know, we may wonder, well, what's that all got to do with productivity? Well, it's because we're already taking up so much of our time scrolling, taking away the time that we could be using on this thing with this. Oh yeah, no, this is good. I do this because it helps me stay informed. I'm connecting with people. I'm, you know, all of the positives we tout, and yet without realizing some of the like artificial relationship stuff we're consuming when it comes to that. So yeah, we misunderstand the word friendship. We misunderstand the word connection, even like you're connecting with people or your engagement is high. We connect to the Wi-Fi is what we connect to these days. Right. Or the Ethernet cord in your ear or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Or in the back of your Matrix head. Yeah, right. So yeah, I think sitting back and redefining these terms, or at least understanding like you can use them to truly connect, which would be sending a direct message to a friend to say, hey, let's Zoom, or send them an email and say, hey, we haven't talked in a while. Let's do a Zoom or a phone call. You can do old school phone call. Even or if you're in the city, you can even text messaging, which again, I don't, some people are like, who uses the phone anymore? And I'm like, it's still, I'm sorry, but if you're this is me saying get off my lawn, but like if you're going to if you're just going to rely on texting for relationship tethering, you're tethering only. You're not connecting, not as much as you should be. Now that's not to say that like me texting with my wife sometimes isn't like augmenting or adding onto our existing relationship, but it's because we already have all that other full-time FaceTime. And I don't mean the technology FaceTime. I mean like face-to-face time in real life. Yeah. You know, so it's like, well, that was my point, right? With social media, you can use it to supplement or to add to those relationships. While, and that's why I've been teaching this to companies about like with remote teams is how to keep everybody together. So you're not losing team members. You're actually staying together. And so, yeah, it's important. Yeah, there's a lot more we could probably dive into, but we should wrap up and say, honestly, take some time to pause and really rethink. What is it you're wanting to get out of these tools that you've been using for a long time? Have you stopped to reconsider what your strategy is there and what you're doing and, again, what you're wanting to get out of it? Because like me, I have found that there are still a number of apps I've not reinstalled on my phone because I don't need them yet. Now, will I reinstall it for a one-time use and then hide it again? Probably. I have been doing that once. There's been a handful, 5, 6 or so, but yeah. Yeah, you don't need a lot of the apps, like you have a browser on your phone too. You could I did that for a while too, where I would just go to facebook.com and the experience is not nearly as nice as having the app, but that's part of the reason. Yeah. It doesn't have to be so nice. So you be nice instead. That's the important. There message. You go. And that's the word to land on with this episode is you be nice instead. So yes, I'm going to send everybody over. We're going to link up Nice Maker and the newsletter and everything. Dave, always great to see you. And you too, so at bare minimum, we're going to talk again in another matter of weeks, just like this. Let's do it. And we may or may not record it, but we will still do it. And it's awesome to see you, man. Yeah, you too, brother. Yeah, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Well, that's another podcast crossed off your podcast listening to-do list. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation with Dave Delaney. I know I loved catching up with Dave. I hope that you're walking away from this conversation with some lessons, with some thoughts, practical or theoretical. something that moves the needle for you or helps you cope with where you're at right now with technology. If you found this episode helpful, would you do me the favor of sharing it with somebody that you know needs to hear it? To do that, all you need to do is hit that share button wherever you're at listening to this, whatever podcast player app of choice you're using. Just hit that share button, or you can go to the show notes over at beyondthetodolist.com and share it from there. Thanks again for sharing. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next episode.